The Baby. Small babe, tell me, as you sat in your mother's cave, what did you build there, little baby mine? Sir, I made the tooth, I invented the eye, I played out hair on a comb harp, I thought up the sigh. I pounded the darkness to guts, heart, and head, America, Eurasia, and Africa, I out of chaos led. I fought the goblins for the heart, 'twas a jewel they desired, but I held it. I fought off the rats from the guts they nibbled, but I smashed the mutts. I choked the bats, so intent for the diamond of my mind. I caught 'em in the ogre's cellar, the tub of blood behind. And the darkness gave me 2 boneless wands or swords. I knew not their meaning then, whether traps or rewards. One was the vorpal phallus, filled with jostling army, hen house and palace, street crowds and history. 2 was the magic tongue, stuffed with names and numbers, the string of song, the waker from fallen slumbers. My mother opened her grave, I sprang out a giant, into another cave where I was a seed again. Hapless and wriggly small as in my father's groin, my Shakespeare's tongue a wall, and impotent my loin. The sun egg I must reach was steeples far away. The world that I must name was shapeless, sneaky gray. Is it wonder then I rage, an old man 1 hour old, a bridegroom come to a bride careless, unready, and cold? My wedding cake still in the field. My bride is 90 and maggoty. My groomsman glaring hangman, my bridal bed bouldery. Small babe, tell me, as you sit in your mother's cave, what do you build there, little baby mine? Rachel. When I was a young man, in passing the city dump, out of the smoking rubbish I heard a small and rusty wail. Naked without any clothes, unwashed from the call, thy navel string uncut, a crusted, besmattered, and loathsome thing, I ruined my clothes and stank for a week, but I brought you to my house. I found that your mother was a gypsy, your father an Indian. Live, I said, and you lived. You grew like a flax field, your hair gold as the sun, your breasts were blossoms. I passed your foster house, it was the time of love. I rewarded your music teacher for the pearly runs in your scarlatti. It was the time of love. I was so afraid you might say no. My heart beat like giant steps. I felt agony in your garden. Then you came to my house. I was ashamed to ask you so often. I gave you a golden ring. I gave you a glass pen. You dressed in silk. You bathed in milk. But on your shoulder, as we embraced, I saw the red speck. It had never washed off. But I went unto you with all the more love. You prospered into a kingdom. I must go away to abroad. When I returned uptown, I met you, and you knew me not. Your hair like flax tow, crimped like an egg beater, your mouth like a cannibal's, bloody, your eyelids massive with blue mud, and a hand muff made of bat's fur. I found out about your carryings on, your lovers and infidelities. My child you had sold to a brothel, you had to pay for your men. In pity, I bribed men to go to you. But your 2 biggest lovers, Lord Dragon and Count Dino, I whispered your triple crossings. They gathered their devils and mobs. In the name of virtue they attacked your tall town house. You bore then your 7-month bastard. They brought you out on your balcony, your house devoured with flames. Out they threw you, and the dogs licked your blood up. Then from your hand I took my ring. From the hag's claw I took my golden ring, her breasts like pigsties. I found her child, and I washed you in my tears. Still there is the spot, red on your shoulder, a speck. I wash you with my tears, and still the speck remains. My darling, it is my fault. I have not tears enough. Granny Crack. I was a leather-skinned harridan. I wandered the county's roads, trading and begging and fighting, with the sun for hat and the road for shoes. You played a pigsty Venus when you were a young old dame. In the graveyard or behind the tavern, the burdock girl was your name. She talked vilely, it is remembered, was a moving and walking dictionary of slang and unconventional language. The detail of her insults was extraordinary. We dozen scoundrels laid you for a quarter each in the ditch. To each you gave the sensation that we were the exploited bitch. You saw me freckled and spotted, my face like a killdeer's egg. When berry-picking kids you ran from me, frightened down the lane by the wood. They saw her as an incredible crone, the spirit of neglected fence corners, of the curious wisdom of brambles, of weeds, of ruts, of stumps, and of things despised. I was the mother of your sun. I was the sister of your moon. My veins are your paths and roads. On my head I bear steeples and turrets. I am the darling of your God. The Ghost. The evening waddles over the fields like a turkey. I lurk, where my knowledge was chopped from my power. All knowledge waits for you at the corner here so murky. The awkward, doltish, low IQ farm boy shambles down the steps, the empty echoing pitcher in his hand. I am! Ha ha! And his hair stands straight up like brambles. Everything, Egyptian hieroglyphs and crystallography, diary of shadows, vast God and the interiors of tree trunks, snowflakes all spin like a fiery corkscrew into his psychology. For I know everything now, having passed into source. Even through me he knows himself. A kidnapped prince. It is too much for him. He falls down hoarse, and they shriek and lift him up. I am not. The evening waddles over the fields like a turkey. I lurk, where my knowledge was severed from my power. All knowledge waits for you at the corner here so murky. The Executioner of Mary Stuart. There was a jolly headman once, attached to an ancient castle. They chose him specially for his task to murder other rascals. For example, I have often felt my analogy might be a rat trap made from the bones of rats, and that was simple old me. So my life was ruined, but I was given a sort of reward, the clothes of the executed, often some astonishingly rich brocade. One day I caught in my jaws a woman who dazzled the sun. I chopped off her head as my task and took what was left for my fun. Annunciation to the mud. In the beginning was the dark. Bridegroom to a headless queen. Far off I hear the hell dogs bark. Doomsday. Red sky morning, shaking like a scarlet head. Doomsday, rise up, spring your lids, you dead. Scrape out coffins, put yourself together. Pack that dust, find that bust. This is the last weather. Trumpet, drummer, thunder, vomit, you cannibals! Shake out those old flesh dresses for the resurrection parties and balls. Here comes Saint Sebastian with a handful of arrows. The big threshing woodpecker is beating on the green drum. Here comes the poor boy who got caught in the harrows. Here comes Saint Bartholomew with his skin. Scroll away, hell this way, heaven that, rat-a-tat-tat. There goes death and there goes sin. Here comes Cain and Abel, hand in hand. Here comes horizontals turning into slopes. Here comes a table changing back to a tree. And here comes the hang people, skipping with their ropes. red sky morning shaking like a scarlet head. Doomsday, rise up, spring your lids, you dead. Scrape out coffins, put yourself together, pat that dust, find that bust. This is the last weather. Trumpet, drummer, thunder, vomit, you cannibals! Shake out those old flesh dresses for the resurrection parties and balls. The Dwarf. 6 inches of my 6-foot paw compressed my height to these 3 feet. On Sabbath day he sold me to the castle of the Starry Street. There I sleep in a cradle and amuse the castle with my minority. No, I am not someone far away. Reach out and touch me. I plucked a berry for the young queen, such fruit as drove her mad. She haunts the stables and the mews, is serviced by the coachman's lad. I stole the tall crown prince's toy and put it in his brother's chest. He knocked his brother out of life. With father's curse he fled to east. The servants swore that they saw angels. I said that they must grovel. I sneered and laughed at all their visions. Now they see only hovel. The swineherd was a noble man, more noble than my lord. With a wicker whack I tripped him up, his brow now levels swineward. 'Twas I who hid beneath the bed when the princess planned elopement. They got as far as the Scarlet Sea when my lord's riders they met. I filled their hearts with maddening lust. I made 3 eyes unfashionable. I filled their hearts with maddening chastity. I split them into sexual. Lady Air and Sir Earth, Alderman Water and the Earl of Fire, Yeoman Quintessence and Miss Light, I set at jar and gyre and ire. From this casement look ye out at rotting sheep and mildewed crop. There's the minstrel limping off. I bade them yesterday his tongue lop. The castle's empty, wonder none. I bade them rebuild inside out. Their fire flew up into the sun. Their cistern rolled into a moon. In a great battle, my dear lord killed and was killed by the crown prince. I've holed up here among the ruins, the compressed cause of everything. The only thing I know to do is crawl into this manger. I'll prop the dead queen's body up. Perhaps 'twill fool a stranger. Come here, shepherds. Here's the way. Ba, ba, ba for an incarnation. This way, aristocratic intelligence. Meow, meow for the new sensation. To the curious observant baby, the humble and the royal bow. Hush-a-bye, my baby do, for see the spider on your mother's brow. The Lost Child. Long have I looked for my lost child. I hear him shake his rattle slyly in the winter wind in the ditch that's filled with snow. He pinched and shrieked and ran away at the edge of the November forest. The hungry old burdock stood by the dead dry ferns. Hear him thud that ball, the acorns fall by the fence. See him loll in the St. Lucie sun, the abandoned sheaf in the wire. O life in death, my bonny nursling, merry drummer in the nut-brown coffin, with vast wings outspread I float, looking and looking over the empty sea. And there, on the rolling death, rattling a dried-out gourd, floated the mysterious cradle filled with a source. I push the shore and kingdom to you, O winter walk with seed-pod ditch. I touch them to the floating child, and lo, cities and gardens, shepherds and smiths,